to go ahead and get started. And Charlotte, are you recording?
Yes.
Okay. See, the purpose of this meeting is to have a panel of physicians of different levels of experience as an independent, in order to create a support for anyone who is new to the Independent Physician Network of Charlotte. And if you're not familiar with Charlotte area, you should know that the market is dominated by two large hospital systems. During this discussion, we're going to try to refer to these hospital systems as generically as possible by referring to them as the hospital or the hospital system. I want to preface this meeting by stating that when I chose this panel, I selected physicians I already had a business relationship with and who were readily available. Most of them serve on the board of the Independent Physicians group. If there are any perceived biases based on gender, race, or practice specialty, it was not intentional. The format of this discussion is a structured list of questions and answers. Except for the panel, all participants are muted. Throughout the presentation, attendees can send questions through the chat and indicate if they want me to ask the question or if they want to ask the question themselves. At the end of this session, we will stop recording and unmute all the participants, and you'll be able to ask any question you want. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce everybody right now. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Colleen Day, and I am the business administrator for Carolina Family Healthcare. I'm also one of the founders of the Independent Physicians of the Carolinas group, and I am one of the two non-physician board members, and I serve as the treasurer for that group. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let the doctors introduce themselves, and they're going to talk briefly about being independent. And I'll start with Dr. Berman, who's been in practice the longest.
Yeah, I'm a very long time. Hi guys, I'm Larry Berman. I practice internal medicine here in Charlotte, and I've been in practice for 30 years. I want to welcome everybody for coming. I think this is a huge step forward and a wonderful, hopefully it's going to be a good exchange of ideas and learning for those that are considering going into independent practice. So I started in 1991 at a hospital that no longer exists. It was acquired into another hospital, which was acquired into another one. But I was recruited, and like I say, I'm practicing internal medicine. I've been in one location since then. Very busy and thank God successful internal medicine practice. I have to tell you that I love it. You have to love doing this to be able to pull this off, especially for this many years. But you also have to have some sort of business acumen to be able to do it. I mean, you can't just finish residency, hang up your shingle and think that it's all going to happen. And we're going to talk more about that later on. But I have 3 physician assistants / nurse practitioners. And the reason I wanted to be independent from day one is I didn't want to be biased by any system in order to make what I thought would be medically relevant and ethically correct medical decision making. So that's held firm, and I can refer to who I want. I also have the independence of being able to have a lifestyle that, and I will be very happy to take any questions and help as we move forward. So with that, we'll go back to Colleen and introduce the next one.
Okay, how about Dr. Bauer, who is not on video, so we don't get to see him.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I guess I've been in practice for 25 years, 15 years in North Carolina, 10 years in New York. In New York, after residency, I started a private practice immediately after residency. I actually was a little bit easier because I went into a practice with one of the other chief residents in my program, but we also had a little bit of a springboard because we also worked for the hospital. So we did medical teaching service with the hospital, and we both worked in a county HIV clinic that was supported by the hospital. So that made it a little bit easier to start things off. But after 10 years there, I moved to North Carolina. I basically just started the practice on my own 15 years ago down here in Valentine. And it's grown pretty quickly and pretty big. And I can say there haven't been many struggles, really. I think, this past year is a huge exception, but probably anyone that's in any small business, especially the medical profession, small business, this was a complete game changer. It was very frustrating, mainly staffing issues. It was very it was tough with schools being closed. A lot of our staff were, had children at home, and they had to make the decision to, try to get a babysitter plus a teacher to look after their kids and help their kids, or leave. And that created that was probably the biggest stress in 25 years of practicing, because then you have to try to find new employees to take their positions, and that's not easy, interviewing all these people while you're trying to run your practice and confined to all these new rules and regulations surrounding video visits and telemedicine and e-visits and social distancing, and it was a bear to run the practice. And then you get an employee in, you teach them, you train them, and you credential them with your EMR, and you realize after 6 weeks they're just not working out, or you maybe even worse, after they've been there for more than 3 months after their probationary period, then they're on unemployment. And that was the worst part. Besides that, the only real strain to private practice is just like everybody else's headache, I would say, and that's the headaches with the EMRs and the updates that the EMRs have, and the way they kind of slow things down, and they don't seem to really help facilitate the day as you go from one patient room to the next. But I think private practice, I know a lot of physicians who are employed by the hospital, and I think we have less headaches and strain, despite all of the business aspect of running a medical office. I think we have less headaches and obviously more autonomy than a lot of the employed physicians, and it seems like less frustration from the physicians I know. And that's both primary care doctors and specialists in both systems that I've become friends with a lot of them over the last 15 years. So I think that's, the independent physicians group is a good resource, and it has been for years. The biggest thing with building a practice is really word of mouth. It's patient word of mouth. That's always seemed to get the most bang for your buck, and obviously it's the least expensive. If it's done wrong, it could be horribly expensive, though. It could kind of crush a practice, obviously. Patient insurance contracts, it's hard to have time to negotiate them.
Dr. Bauer,
Yeah.
we're going to address a lot of that. We're going to address a lot of that throughout this. If you want to hold off on some of those comments.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I have to say, really, unless if anyone has any questions.
Okay. So Dr. Liu, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, James Liu. I'm a cardiologist. I'm in the South Charlotte, Valentine area. I have been in private practice for a total of 17 years, but independent on my own for 12. So my path is a little different. I moved to Charlotte in 2002 and joined a group of cardiologists who were 17 cardiologists, Charlotte Cardiology Associates. And then after about 5 years, 2007 or so, we were acquired by one of the hospital systems and merged in with another group and formed a gigantic group of nearly 100 physicians, cardiologists, cardiac surgeons, pediatric cardiology, vascular surgery. And a few years into that, I tried to kind of work within the system there. So at that point, being employed for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And it was pretty clear. It was very, volume driven, see more, do more. And had the opportunity to break away, as did a few of my other colleagues in different parts of the region. And been on my own now for 12 years. I'm actually located, like I said, in South Charlotte, Valentine area in the same building as Dr. Canellos. And I think the main reason why I wanted to be independent is I just couldn't keep up with the demands of the hospital system, just constantly doing more, ordering more, testing more, those expectations, and having to answer to mid-level management people, their idea of your quota, your volume, things like that. And that's kind of the best part about being independent. You don't have these non-medical people, breathing down your neck, telling you, oh, you're not doing enough here, not doing enough there. We're not seeing this out of you. We're going to put you over here in this other office, 2 days a week, and then this other office 1 day a week, and move you around like a pawn. But like Larry said, it comes with its challenges. You can't just, you got to really love what you do to kind of put up with all the challenges that I know we're going to talk about later. So I'll pass
Thank you.
the next one. Thanks.
All right. How about Dr. Canellos?
Hi, this is Dino Canellos. So I started I finished residency. Actually, I was one of the first residents in Union County. I was at that time, it was a rural family medicine program. So I finished in 2000 and opened up my own practice immediately right after that, which was very gutsy. Some say stupid at that time, but with the help with a lot of the doctors, my mentors there, basically my preceptors and all stuff there to help me open up the practice, which really helped. So I've been in practice since 2000, Carolina Family Healthcare. Started in Weddington and then consolidated everything to Ballantyne, basically right there in South Charlotte. In 2007, I even opened a sleep center. So now I also have a 2-bed sleep center there, so which has been fun, especially with all the sleep apnea patients that we would see. It was nice because at the time I didn't know where to send them, and I didn't want to use the hospitals and all that stuff. But yeah, I've always been an entrepreneurial. So when I went to residency, I did not want to work for a hospital, and for the last 21 years, it's because I have my own freedom. I can do whatever I want. I immediately set up where Friday afternoons, I have never been open. I mean, we stop at noon, and I've done that since day one of practice, for example, and my staff love it. I've loved it. It just gives you a little bit extra freedom, but I loved it because I can get home and be done. I still got work to do. It's not that nobody's ever done, but I can control how many patients I see. I don't have somebody breathing down my neck telling me what to do. Colleen is, my administrator, and she does enough of that already, but in a good way, right? And I need that, but all of us need to have that. And staffing is the issue. Is trying to find somebody that can help you with all this is very important. But being able to have that freedom is just absolutely huge, to do what you need to do and all stuff and take off. I do have 5 mid-levels, equivalent of basically 3 full-time. And that's been a great help too, having that, so I can go places and take off at times and things like that. But it's nice being able to communicate with all the independent docs. I think Colleen and I helped form in 2007 the Independent Docs Association for us to do this, basically, to be able to communicate, to learn, to go through all this stuff. So we don't have to do this all on our own. So there's resources, and this has been the best resource. And that's what I love about all of us, is we all contribute to each other this way. So to help with any management. So, but yeah, to ask questions away of how we do it and all that stuff. But it's not hard, but it's hard, if that makes sense. I mean, you got to put effort in it. And Berman said the same thing. Is I love it. I mean, I would, otherwise most people retire at this time because they hate it, and I love it. And hopefully to continue for a while. So, but thank you.
Thank you. How about Dr. Favara?
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here as part of this panel. So, I'm Justin Favero, oncology specialist of Charlotte. I came out of fellowship and joined the practice in 2006. I was lucky and wanted to come to Charlotte for family reasons. Lucky to find Jim Boyd, Jeff Chapman, Grant Taylor. They had established this practice, in about year 2000. They were great mentors to me. I was kind of the first doctor they brought on. We had one location in Eastover Medical Center in Eastover, and then we opened a second location in South Charlotte. We've been independent the entire time. why I chose to be independent kind of goes back to how I understand medicine. I grew up in a medicine family. My mother was a physician and owned her own practice. I kind of grew up in that practice with paper charts and running urines and CBCs, and it was a family practice, and it was very busy, but a lot of variety. And then ultimately, as a physician and the owner, you had control, over what happened. And she did actually sell her practice briefly to MUSC. We were in Charleston. She terribly regretted that and then pulled back and took it back for herself. And so I kind of saw how that worked and how much she hated, working for a big organization. And I think that the great things about being independent are, you have physician autonomy, which in oncology anyways, a lot of hospitals have what are called pathways. And they basically kind of say, okay, these are the recommended treatment options, for your patient for this diagnosis. And, there's things that are not on the list. There may be reasons why they're not on the list for financial reasons, maybe whatever's better for the system. But when I'm looking at the patient, I want to make the decision what's best for that patient. And I have the most autonomy I can possibly have by being independent and being able to do that. So that's what I love about it. I love being able to control all the things that Dino and Larry talked about, controlling the workplace and your schedule and your hours. And so it's a great fun job. It has a lot of rewards, and you can kind of control how the practice grows. I think the biggest challenge is our personnel and partners, and I've been lucky to find a great partner that I have now. And Nasrat Shahade just joined our practice, and but just having the right people around you, is very important. And so I encourage you to really think hard about that when you're coming out of the hospital.
Thank you. Well, since you brought up Dr. Shahade, why don't we hear from him next?
Thank you for the panel and for everybody who put this program. I'm very excited to be here. I'm maybe the new kid in the block. I'm the newest guy to private practice. And my name is Nasrat Shahade. I came to Charlotte actually 6.5 years ago. I was in Toledo for 7 years, and I want to go to a warmer place. So I was also working there for a big system like the system I work for here. And I came here to establish hospital-based practice, like, hospitals trying to build their practices for oncology because, for many reasons. And I established the practice with the 3 doctors, and actually over 5 years, the practice grew significantly, from 3 doctors to almost 20 doctors. Then when things gets bigger, there's a lot of challenges that comes with it. So to make the story short, I recently joined Dr. Favreau. I was very lucky to know him for years. Actually, we kind of worked collaboratively over the years, competed with each other. He was in private as with the system, and I know a lot about him. And when the moment came to leave, hospital-based practice, I approached him. He was very forthcoming, very supportive from the day number one. I think finding the right person, to be honest with you, who can embrace you and help you, is very important, because I was scared. We'll talk about that, to leave a system because you feel like you're under umbrella, you're protected, and you're fine. So to leave that, protection can be very stressful. So I really love it because, there is a lot of autonomy here. The reason I left, the system I left start with the word Novant. I'm just kidding. So because there has been significant, intervention and interfering with the way we practice medicine. I'm an oncologist, came to see a lot of, general oncology and build the practice. Then suddenly the system decided to change the trajectory because they want each doctor to specialize in one system. And they have done this abruptly without really a lot of preparation. So okay, you're going to see today just GI cancer, nothing else. And without any patient paying attention to what comes with that. Also get sick of a lot of work that we do that doctors are not just compensated, but it's kind of waste of time. We finish a meeting to have another meeting. Every day you have a meeting in the morning, meeting in the afternoon, just kind of repeating things. And eventually you have to go to these meetings because they are tying your compensation to these meetings. So that's kind of, they have like a point system that if you don't do these meetings and attend, that's going to affect your, plus, getting a lot of instructions from people that honestly, they have no clue what they're doing in terms of the practice. and eventually you just get sick of it, and they limit your potential. You know, a lot of doctors, they have potential, they want to expand, they want to do things. A lot of bureaucracy. You want to do simple things in a system, you have to go through a chain of command, many layers. It takes a long time. Clinical trial, for example, it takes so much time to open a clinical trial in a system than private practice, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of bureaucracy. At any point, you know, I really enjoyed being in private practice. It's been about 5 months, a lot of autonomy. I work with people. I feel that even the staff that work for independent, they are much happier than the staff work for a hospital system. I don't want to just, you know, I want to just give some time for people to ask questions down the road, but I'm very excited to be here, and I really love it so far.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Hondros, you're one of our newest independents. How about you?
Hey everybody, Taki Hondros. I'm in an independent family practice here in the Matthews area, so on the south side of town. I too left an unmentioned hospital system 4 months ago after I've been embedded in this area for 16 years. And so we've watched the good, the bad, and the ugly come and go. And so for us, like Dr. Shahade said, and for various other administrative reasons, it was time to look to become autonomous. This group, IPC, they helped a lot. They provided good guidance for us. They helped give good advice. They were also very accommodating and accepted, you know, my staff, my manager, and our office here with open arms. And I've been doing it now for 12 weeks. So I think I'm a little younger than you, Dr. Shahade. So probably a little newer kid on the block, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I've never felt more autonomy. I've never felt more freedom. I've never felt that I finally have time to spend with patients. And I don't feel like I have a numerator or denominator over me anymore. It's eye-opening to be able to take the time, see your patients, not feel the grudge of just do more, click a button, click a button, click a button. And then at the end of the year, they tell you, sorry, you did all these great work, you met your metrics, but there's no value-based healthcare dollars to say thank you for you. And so those are one of many reasons why, you know, us transitioning out, because at the end of the day, those of us that are in primary care, we are a lower cost paradigm to move to value-based healthcare. We are the ones that can drive the needle and work with consultants that are also high value specialists that do great work and provide that care. And the biggest thing for me too is some of these consultants that are on here tonight, they're seeing patients a lot more quicker. They're not waiting months to be seen. You could be in a hospital system with 100 cardiologists, 50 psychiatrists, and the wait list is still 4 to 6 months. Some of the folks that are here tonight are seeing my patients in a week, 10 days, far more quicker. And the great thing about it is when they're done, they call me on the phone, like an old school, and say, I saw Mrs. Smith, I saw Mr. Joe today, here's what I think, thanks for the referral. It goes a long way to have that interpersonal connection with your consultants, and the patients feel better served from it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Liu, you've been on both sides for a while, going from the hospital, and you've been independent for a while. What do you feel are the benefits to a patient to be seen by an independent physician?
Well, for patients, I think what they benefit in that they get more personalized care. You know, you're not stuck in a system that you just get passed around from one doctor to another. The group I was with previously, you know, the doctors were moved around so much that, you know, the patient would see one doctor 1 month and then 2 months later come back and see a mid-level, then the next time come back and see another doctor. And I think that continuity of care and just getting to know the patient longitudinally to just be a little more effective and efficient in their care, getting them to the right, you know, other specialists if necessary, or, you know, what appropriate testing or procedure they may need. So I think that the patients like the fact that we, like Dr. Hondros was saying, that we communicate to each other pretty openly and easily. And that's very reassuring to patients too.
So Dr. Canellis, do you have, what do you think are the benefits to the patient to be seen by an independent since you're in primary care?
Well, I mean, I think it's more personable. I think I'm not feeling rushed unless, you know, a complex patient came in and, you know, then I got to move quicker. But I mean, I have that autonomy to go, I can refer somebody to a Novant system. I can refer somebody to an Atrian system. I can refer somebody to an independent doctor. I mean, obviously I gear towards more than independent docs, but there's times when I know, look, there's not enough of that specialty or whatnot, then you know, I'm going to use a system, but I also know I'm going to, you know, specifically try to use a specific doctor there or not, but I have that choice. I think patients see that too, that we have the choice to decide where to go. And nowadays, I mean, since, you know, some patients will still ask me, old fashioned patients say, hey, do you go to the hospital? I'm like, I haven't gone to the hospital in 21 years. But because of hospitalists now, and actually I don't think of any of the doctors that go anywhere. And if they do, it's rare, unless they're in the rural areas. But I enjoy just being able to pick and choose who I, you know, want, but I give options too. It's not just, you know, here's one doctor. I say, where do you want to go? Here's who I like, versus saying, I've got to send you to one place. So, but, you know, having the luxury too, to do what you want, and, you know, and enjoy the value-based dollars. You know, we don't get reimbursed as good, but, you know, I control costs, and that's what's nice too. In the beginning, I probably was too stingy with a lot of things, but that goes, you know, with opening a practice, you have to be, but you know, I can control costs. I mean, those are probably my other things. Again, I can also enjoy my life too a little bit, and if I have to go somewhere, I can go now, and not have to be, you know, strangled down somewhere. So, or I've got to ask permission now that I've got to leave or something happens, and that's the other problem. So.
Thank you. So I want to ask some of these people who've been independent the longest, like Dr. Bauer, if you can still hear us. If you could go back in time when you started your practice, what would you do differently?
I just had to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What would I do different? I actually don't think there's anything I would do different. I can't think of anything I would do different than I did to begin with, and that I'm doing right now. Because I have so many facets in my practice. We're mainly a busy primary care office, but we also do lots of little lump and bump skin surgical procedures, and I have 4 cosmetic lasers. I do a good amount of Botox. We do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy and anti-aging therapy, and we do clinical trials. I have 12 separate clinical trials going on right now. So I mean, it's a good mix of everything, and it keeps things interesting and exciting. I'm never ever bored coming to work, and I always enjoy, and I love coming to work. It's just like I said, I think the main issue is the EMRs. They drive us nuts. That's, you know, day in and day out, it's the EMR that causes the frustrations. Everything else is good.
So if I asked you,
it's nice.
If I asked you what the challenges or the worst part of being independent was, would you say it's the EHR?
150%. The EHR, but there's no way around that. So it is what it is. That's you gotta play the game if you want to stay in it. And the EHR is the biggest struggle, I think. You know, going from room to room, none of them seem to facilitate patient care. At least, and I may not be using mine the right way, but you get so busy you don't have time to really sit down and make templates and stuff to try to make it work a little bit more in your favor. So that's the biggest frustration.
Okay, for any of you on the panel, do you have any other comments that you'd like to make about, the challenges of being independent?
Well, I mean, I think that there are challenges certainly in a town where there's two systems that dominate as far as, especially if you're in primary care, getting patients. I think part of the success of my practice is I've been doing it so long that the practice pretty much self-feeds itself. And people, they know of me and they know of the practice. But I think for people coming out or deciding that, maybe they want to leave a system or they're finishing up with their training, you have to think twice about, like I was saying when I introduced myself, about hanging your shingle up and saying, okay, well, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and here I am. Because, I mean, honestly, it's going to be really tough. I mean, it is. You're not going to get referrals from either of the two systems on a fairly regular basis. I mean, your friends will send you folks, and but the majority of the referrals are going to come from within the practice itself. That being said, you have to weigh. It's like what some of the other people were saying. I mean, there's pros and cons. Pros and cons of everything. You got lifestyle, you got the ability to spend more time with patients. You have, you make your own shots. You want to take time off, you can. You want to change something in the office, you can. You want to fire somebody, you don't have to wait 10 years for it to go through the right things. And then there's negatives. The negatives are also similar to the positives. I mean, every decision in a primary care practice falls on the boss of the primary care practice, which is typically, the owner, us. So, you're going to have staffing issues, you're going to have issues regarding economics of scale, keeping it for, again, having said that, the scale balances completely and always has, so the question that Colleen said, would I do anything different, or would we do anything different? No, I wouldn't. I mean, I love it. I love it. Sure, it's not easy. Don't think that, what Dr. Bauer was saying, EHR is an EHR, whether you work for Novant or Atrium, or I'm sorry, any of the systems around here. You're gonna have to use the EHR too, and it's going to be screened, and you're going to have questions and answers, and the cues about all that stuff. So yeah, it's all relative, but at the end of the day, I go home happy, and I go home being able to say, okay, I called my own shots and I made a difference, and that's really sounds corny, but that's why I went to med school. So, okay.
Thank you. Dr. Favaro, you had an opportunity to go with one of the hospitals, but you chose to stay independent. So why did you choose to stay independent?
Well, I guess it's a paradigm that I'm understanding the hospitals do. They kind of bring you in and offer you a great contract, and feel like your life is going to be better. They kind of paint this picture, but the reality of it is very different. The reality of it is, you're obligated to do all these things you don't want to do, like all the different meetings that Dr. Shahade was talking about. You're pigeonholed by administrators to practice in a certain way, and then your contract changes for the worse. And so it's kind of a paradigm, and it's not something you think it's going to be better, but it isn't. And physicians try to come together and try to push back against the hospitals, but in the end, when you become employed, you pretty much become susceptible to what they want you to do. And I didn't want to be in that position, so that's why I stayed. I mean, we were offered, the practice was changing, and doctors retiring and doctors wanting to go to the hospital, and I didn't want to do that. I just retained the practice about 2 years ago on my own, and then was able to grow the practice. We're very fortunate. I mean, I think that the things that the positives are that, yes, I mean, the Novant referral system that we had some in place in our practice went away, but I was able to work with the Independent Physicians Association here, and Colleen and Charlotte, and you guys have just set up a wonderful group of collaboration, and we work really hard to take care of the patients well and work together. And that's kind of where you build your referral base. And that's where I was able to build a referral base, and it's a very mutual referral base. And so I think there's opportunity in Charlotte, fortunately, to do things like that, because a lot of doctors want to come out and work together. And so I think the future is the growth of the independent physicians in town, offering better value for the care. So I think there is a huge growth opportunity in that regard. And so I think I think at the time I was being asked to come to the hospital, I was able to envision it was actually happening where the growth of the independent group was happening at the same time. And so it's been great to be a part of that.
Thank you. Doctors Liu and Hondros, since you both came out of the hospital system, I want to ask you to kind of elaborate on why you chose to leave the hospital and what were the fears that you had when you were considering leaving the hospital. And Dr. Liu, if we can start with you.
Yeah, I think, well, I just want to echo what Dr. Favara had said, that his characterization of what the hospitals do when you get acquired and run by them he's spot on. That was exactly my experience, coming from an independent setting and then being acquired by the hospital. They lure you in, they promise you this and that, then they sit you down, they audit you, and they tell you, oh, you're not meeting these goals, and then they pull the rug out from under you and say, here's a new contract, sign it or leave. And so that's exactly what happened in my situation. And I was lucky enough to leave and be able to set up practice, in the same region. So it just worked out. In my situation, worked out. And the biggest reluctance or hesitation that I had was just not knowing what to do, not knowing how to set up a practice. Where do you start off with? Location, staffing, EMR. It was kind of overwhelming, credentialing, things like that. So this organization, Independent Physicians, was a great resource at helping me get started. And like I said, I don't know that I would have done anything differently or what I could have told myself coming out. I think looking back, I would have said, number one, contracting is going to be vastly different. Reimbursement rates are much lower for people in private practice that are not affiliated, don't have the negotiating power of a large institution. So there's a little sticker shock involved when you first leave. And but then like Dr. Canellis was saying, it's been, you kind of control your expenses and you just kind of try and control your overhead to mitigate some of that, what you expected to have, what your expected revenue may have been. I think also the complexity of contracting and was something I wasn't prepared for, that there really isn't any negotiation with insurance companies when it comes to your reimbursement rates for office visits or procedures. We did try and go through a negotiation through an attorney, and it was helpful. It was a long process, but it was helpful in some ways, but some of the costs offset some of the gains. So I think if you're starting out on your own, leaving the hospital, setting up on your own, I think having an advisor, a consultant would probably be the one thing that would be very helpful for anybody considering that move. But in the end, it's totally, like everyone said, it's worth it. You have some control over your lifestyle. You don't have to answer to other people and what their expectations are. You can just take care of the patient in the way that you've been trained to do, and the things that you've spent all these years trying to accomplish.
Thank you. Dr. Hondros, what drove you to leave the hospital and what were your fears as you were leaving?
I think the biggest thing is fear of the unknown. I think having a lot of friends that have been either independent or work for hospital systems. And so the other fear was, would patients come? I mean, I felt like we did a good job as an office caring for them. The question was, would they leave the comfort of a big system with a big my chart, the big, and with a lot more bells and whistles. But I've been impressed that patients, as I've seen them now here at my new place, because we've been busy since day one, I've been impressed with the fact that the patients have gotten frustrated with the idea of corporate healthcare. They're getting hidden bills, hidden charges, facility fees, all these things that you're kind of hearing now that you're on the outside and maybe didn't pay much attention to because you spent time clicking 1,000 buttons. And now that, like Dino described, they're like, well, if I get sick, what hospital do I go to? Which one do you work with? And now I can tell them the one that's best for you. Which specialist can you send me to? The one that's best for you. We now have that power to choose who the best cancer doctor may be or who the best surgeon. You're not kind of tied to the hospital to tell you only refer here. So it has been eye-opening now to pick and choose to send the patients that what truly is best for them. It's not best. The patients are yours. They don't belong to the hospital despite how they tell you that. My journey to get here, because it is like the fully independent folks have said, kind of scary to say that I'm going to go out and do it. And so I chose my path to independence was to work with the groups that kind of helps administrate some of my day-to-day in the background that I don't want to deal with. I don't want to deal with the billing. I don't want to deal with the coding. I kind of chose to go independent, have the autonomy of making decisions, but have someone in the background that can negotiate better reimbursement rates and better collection rates and help drive your EMR and help integrate it with Epic or help with IT issues, the stuff that probably would have taken a lot more for me. Not that I haven't been working hard to learn how to run a business, but anytime we have issues with staffing, we just sit with my manager in the office and we get to decide. I don't have to ask 50 administrators over her or me to try to get an answer. So, but I've been impressed with the embracement of, like I said, all the folks on this call tonight and our colleagues and the patients will come. I'm not really afraid. If there's a good doctor and if you're a person who's looking and you can be strategic about it, your patients are savvy. Google, internet, there's so many ways that you can show where your new shingle is and you can succeed at it. And so it is a lot of work, please don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, like everyone says, it's definitely been very enlightening and exciting so far.
Thank you. Dr. Shihada, when you left the hospital, you joined oncology specialist with Dr. Favaro. How did you come to that decision, and what was your biggest fear leaving the hospital?
I made that decision when, the program grew so much and there are a lot of restriction how much you can do. My personal experience, like I used to go to the downtown, for example, and have another office in another location, and suddenly you have to close that office and you have to focus only on one discipline, plus other issues, that there is not time for to mention that. But it became clear to me, that I need to kind of find different way. And it was not easy decision because to find and to establish your practice alone as an oncology, it is very challenging because Justin, he knows that better than anybody. There's chemotherapy, infusion, you have to have the right staff and EMR, etc. So it's alone, it's very difficult. And since I know Justin for the last 5-6 years, I approached him, and that he's a great doctor and he was very embracing. So I think it was not that difficult decision since he's already established, his offices are running infusion. So it was really, really easy decision at one point. But the moment that I left, it was not easy. The fears was that actually retaliation from hospitals. I'm sure if there are doctors who are joining the group and part of the hospitals, they're concerned with the system. They are very strong. They can hurt you. And the biggest thing is that they keep the patients. They have in the contract that you cannot contact your patients. You cannot use their EMR to talk to the patient. These are your patients that you took care for years, and suddenly they cannot reach you. I mean, to the degree that if the patient asks about you, they will say, no, we don't know where. He's not with the system anymore, even though they know where did you go or where's your office. So having patients, referral also a concern that comes, to the mind when you leave, hospital, because in the hospital, you don't have to work for the referrals. You have to. I mean, we've done that, but most of the time the patient comes to you because this is like a kind of an automatic, referral system that, you are doing GI cancer. The patient goes to that doctor or the other doctor. So, I mean, there are some fears, but with time, I think things getting easier and easier. And I mean, this is my 5th month and I feel way more comfortable compared to the first few weeks when I left the hospital system. I think the most important thing is to If you're going to go independent, that's great. But if you find a group that already established, that can cut significant amount of headache that you have to go through.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of address some questions a little bit quicker because of the time. I don't want to keep everybody for too long. But both Drs. Berman and Hondros, and I hate to keep picking on you, Dr. Hondros, but you both participate in managed service organizations. So that is an option for people who are independent. And so I kind of want you to address, why you chose to go with the MSO, and then how you went about finding an MSO, and then how did you choose it? If you could tell us that, and Dr. Berman, because you've been with one for a longer time, if you could kind of tell us about that.
Sure, happy to. So it just got a little bit overwhelming. With a busy practice comes a share of problems, and I'm getting a little older in my life and a little less, I don't know. I just felt like I had to move forward in order to establish parameters for my practice to keep things going, such as, hassles. First of all, an MSO, for those that you may not understand what it is, it's shared resource pools. So for example, I'm part of an organization that has maybe 75 to 100 doctors in the state of North Carolina. We have a single tax ID number. We're still completely independent. We manage our own businesses, but yet the organization, the entity itself, has things such as HR, their credentialing department, coding and management department, different departments that we rely, IT, things that I had to do as an individual practitioner for all these years. And like I said, I'm getting older and I don't want to do it anymore. So yes, you pay for this. This is not free, but you get negotiated better contracts. So in essence, I'm actually doing better than I was. I've been involved with one for about 5 years, maybe 6 years now. I think the people have been really good. They've been extremely helpful. How did I find out about them? It was through research and word of mouth. I interviewed a couple of them, and this one was the one that I chose. I think is a good fit for me. It certainly has. Don't think that it's not going to, that it's going to take the total burden off of you. It doesn't, because the end responsibility is your own. But they certainly will guide you. They look at your charts and they get, okay, Dr. Berman, look, you need to, you're doing too much of this, not enough of this, or you have to put down smoking cessation, all this stuff. So all these these caveats help. Where at the end of the day, the insurance companies look at these caveats and they pay you for good outcome data based on that. So I think that, honestly, I'll close with this, but I think that ultimately we're going to have to be part of a collective group, whether it's a large group of independent physicians in Charlotte or an MSO type thing. I think the days of just opening up and thinking that you're going to deal with the credentialing, it's tough because you're not going to get the contracts that you want. Plus, it's a lot of hassles. So, thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Hondros, can you tell us a little bit about going with an MSO, and then how did you go about finding one?
Yeah, so being a state leader of the North Carolina Academy of Family Physicians and knowing a lot of folks, because I get to meet a lot of doctors across many breadths of family medicine across the state, sort of how this for me came to be. But joining an MSO, medical service organization, like Dr. Berman said, is they provide the bells and whistles of day to day. I call them my administrative backbone. So on top of the coding, the billing, the IT, the HR, all that stuff, and far better, like you said, reimbursement rates. The big thing for me is that they also came with a greater power of collaborative services. So for me, with part of this fee, I get care coordination and management, which I never experienced that in full force in hospital medicine. I get transitional care management. So our Medicare patients get hands-on to help make sure that when they leave the hospital, the transitional care visit is already done and set up and prepped for you, medicine's reconciled. In our clinic as well, we're going to have full collaborative team-based care, on-site nutritionists, on-site counseling, behavioral, on-site pharmacy. So those are folks that we know that if you work with them and your patients work with them, that they all help drive down costs because you keep folks in your primary care home. And so for me, it took kind of the fear of the unknown to go 100% independent, and it allowed me to feel like I had autonomy with decision making and someone to hold my hand when I get stuck, like Dr. Berman said. I mean, at the end of the day, I can choose to hire an employee, or I can choose to let them go through the resumes and tell me who they think is good for a position. You know, like right now I'm interviewing for a family practitioner. They can scour the resumes, let me know who they think is the best, or they can forward the resumes and I get to choose if I want to interview this person, bring them here, talk to them, and consider if they're a good fit. So you can utilize as much of that hand-holding as you want, or use them when you need their support.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to there are 5 things that I think that physicians should focus on when they're going out on their own. And these are not in any particular order, but you know, I feel that they're the credentialing and the contracting with the payers, the staffing, finances, which includes joining a managed service organization or doing it on your own, location, determining your location. You need to know where you'll open your office. Most people focus around where they are currently located, and the EHR. Amongst my panelists, does anybody have anything else to add to that, or if you disagree with anything?
No, I
You
think
go with an attorney, even like looking at working with an attorney to help you sometimes with credentialing and all this stuff. That if you're not going to go with an MSO, like we use, you know, you either do it yourself or do you go with an attorney as well to help with that. Financial planners, accountants, you know, that was my backbone of starting is having a great financial planning system for your HR system. You know, retirement, knowing, okay, how much money do you need, how much do you need to borrow, where do you borrow it, how do you borrow it, and all that kind of stuff. That's very important as well.
Yeah, I agree that financial planner kind of is important. Like Dino said, for those HR setup with your employees, your payroll setup, that kind of thing. Also, an attorney just to help set up the corporation. If you're going completely out on your own, attorney to set up the corporation, accountant to set up the accounts and bookkeeping, getting all that straightened. And attorney, like I said, can help with contracting in the beginning. But you just got to ask around, do research. And so the first person I went to when I wanted to go out on my own was Dr. Berman, and the second one was Dr. Canellos. So.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add to that before we move on to resources?
We also have in our practice, a marketing department, you know, to get your website. Sherry Bradshaw works with our practice to get our Facebook, our social media. There's a presence there that I think you need. You don't need to be as high of a level as a hospital system, but I think that's also part of letting people know where you are and how do you get the word out about your practice. What are the things you're going to do to make yourself well known in the community as an individual physician, which may not have happened when you were in the hospital system, or if it did, you can build on it. So.
Okay. Thank you all. So I want to talk a little bit about resources. So some of you who've recently come out of the hospital systems, what resources did you use in deciding to go independent? And how did you find your resources?
I'll take this. I think it's not easy to find resources. And I honestly, before that, I was not aware of the independent physician organization. And I feel that, you know, physician, if they make that decision, there is not much, you know, I see support outside to get direction how to proceed, you know, in terms of, you know, the location of the practice, etc. I mean, that's going to be struggling. For me, as I told you, it was easy because Dr. Favreau practice that I'm familiar with. But for somebody who's going to leave a hospital system, I'm not aware of a lot of resources. You know, I feel like sometimes even physicians don't have much protection. Like if you have issues that you want to talk to organization to complain about your issues, you know, with whatever system, there is not much. You know, I tried to reach Medical Board of North Carolina, and I feel like they didn't help much physician. They are not. I feel like there's not many resources for physicians to go to, and it's great to hear about this organization, the Independent Physician. I think we should market it more, and we have to support it as independent doctors and move it to the next level to help other doctors who are looking for support from the system to make that move.
I think to add to that, Colleen, is that we all have friends outside of hospital medicine. And so, you know, they may be in another part of the state, but I would encourage people to talk to their academies. I would encourage people to talk to their family medicine academy, internal medicine academy, hematology oncology academy, because most of us are members of our own academies and most of us are going to be hospital employed, but there's a lot that are independent that your academy leaders or even your academy administrators may know a good independent oncologist in Charlotte or a good family practitioner in Charlotte. Or I would say that was a big help for me, is to say, who do we know strong that's in the Charlotte area that's independent? Okay, it happened to be Dr. Dina, or, you know, and to just call and ask. And then, like Dr. Favara said, try to make your presence known. I mean, there's folks here that can help you with doing the advertising, increasing your Facebook presence. You know, I even created a website that was very, you know, informational. And then from that, it kind of, you know, call your local newspaper, do an article, you know, offer to talk about something in your area of expertise on TV. I mean, there's a lot of creative ways here that in many ways that ends up being free advertising for you. You just have to kind of call and reach out. And with those kinds of things, then you stumble on other places and avenues where you can get word out about you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they would like to add? I'm looking out at who all is participating, and I recognize a lot of names of people who are independents. And if any of you all would like to add anything, if you just raise your hand, and Charlotte can tell you how to do that, and we can unmute you, and you can feel free to comment to add anything else to this discussion.
So if you will raise your hand, if you go down to reactions at the very bottom, you can raise your hand there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't raise my hand because I'm on my phone. This is Faraz Kassab, rheumatologist, South Charlotte Rheumatology, and wanted to thank everyone for this great meeting. And myself, I just became independent about 6 months ago, and I can say that I saw the light by doing this after being in the hospital system prior, and echo all of the comments that all of the colleagues mentioned, both in terms of primary care and specialty. Wanted just to add a couple of things about the two previous questions that I think I found interesting. One of them is from the patient perspective, what does it make a difference to be in the hospital system? There was a recent article actually, and was made a news story on NPR about the facility fees, and this is really an eye opener. Some actually the oncologists on the call might know about that more as well. When a facility fee is charged for a service that is done in the same building as an independent or a non-facility based practice, and what the difference in that fee is. I invite everyone to look at that article. I shared it on LinkedIn, and essentially it was about, a simple procedure like a joint injection, where the doctor joined a hospital system, and all of a sudden the bill for that service went up from something like $100 to $1,500 because of the addition of a $1,400 facility fee, and the doctor only moved one floor up in the same building. So I think the facility fees are a way for the hospital to monetize on services that are provided by the doctor for no really medically indicated reason, and it's inflating the cost of medical care. So I just wanted to mention that as a really from the patient perspective, what value it is to see an independent doctor. And the other comment that I wanted to make is about seeing a CPA. I think someone mentioned an accountant. For me, that was the only thing that kind of calmed my fears about going to being independent, is when I sat down with a CPA who has had 15, 20 years experience in running medical practices and showed me the, potential, how the practice would work and how long it's going to take to ramp up and how many patients will I need to see to be able to break even and become, whole after this, what I would call an adventure into going into independent practice. So I think that's going to be key for someone to calm the fears. I mean, it's all going to be based on just possibility of, there's a lot of unknown. You don't know how many patients you're going to see, but it's still, when you see some numbers, that will calm the fear. So I highly recommend hiring someone and sitting down and just letting you look at the numbers and see if that's something that you are comfortable with or not. And those are the only two comments I wanted to make, but I thank you everyone for putting this together.
Thank you. And I do have someone else waiting to make a comment, but I want to also let you all know, because we don't necessarily know who everybody is, I don't want any of the physicians to give out their personal information, but you can privately chat with people. When you click on the chat, you can select their name and you can ask them for their information, and they can share with you their private information if you don't already have it. But I do want to ask Gaurav Chand if you can unmute yourself, because and you had a comment.
Yes. Thank you very much, Colleen. I just wanted to first and foremost thank you guys for setting this up. I appreciate the panel for their insights. My name is Gaurav Chand, and I just started with Carolina Digestive, new to the area and fresh out of fellowship. So it's really enlightening to hear everybody's story coming from private practice or, coming from the hospital system and into independent practice. So I definitely appreciate everybody's input into how everything's going. For me, it's, a totally new road. And it being in private practice, I really appreciate this organization and keeping me up to date in the nuances into independent medicine and how to navigate this moving forward. So just wanted to say thanks for all of this, and I appreciate it. Nice to meet everybody. It's difficult to meet people in the age of COVID, but this has been nice.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they would like to comment on? Otherwise, before we stop recording? Okay, if we want to, you can stop recording and then, thank you.
Hi, Colleen. How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. This is Lanric Gmo. I think I know everybody here, most people here. Hi, I'm with Carolina Digestive. I really enjoyed the talk. I saw the speakers. These are all my good friends. I did not want to miss this for anything. So this was very, very great. We, as an independent group, share all of those concerns you guys have mentioned. But I'm actually looking at the future, and with a lot of new emphasis on price transparency coming down the pipe, I think that the hospital systems are going to start feeling some pressure. And we all know they can't compete with us when it comes to price. But the area that I think we need to really focus on is on information exchange. So particularly, we know that Atrium is working on going on Epic in the coming year or two at the most. So now the two big systems are going to be on Epic. But guess what? Their Epics are not going to communicate with each other. That is really stupid. And that makes it frustrating for us to get records when they go to one hospital or the other hospital. They're going to make us want to have to choose sides. So I think we need to organize around this, have some type of legislative agenda, maybe, to sort of force their hands to share records on Epic if they're both on the same system. Just something I wanted to put out there for everybody to sort of think about, and we can sort of have another meeting about this. Thank you.
Thank you.